Coming up on UGTV, Board of Commission meeting of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas.
Good evening, everyone. We want to thank you for attending tonight's commission meeting. At this time, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Roll call. Walters.
Here.
Philbrook.
Here.
Bynum.
Here.
Walker.
Here.
Townsend.
Here.
McKiernan. Mugia. Johnson.
Here.
Kane.
Here.
Markley.
Here.
Holland.
Here. This evening, the invocation is being given by Reverend George Kemper of Ebenezer Ministries. Please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Shall we bow our heads? Lord, you have entrusted us as stewards of your community. Please grant our hearts as we make these decisions on the issues that are before us. We seek you first in all that we do together. We pray that you would give great inspiration and wisdom, and that we always be mindful of our service to you and our community. We confess that we are nothing without you, and our trust is in you alone. Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Reverend Kemper, for being here this evening. Ms. Cobbins, are there any revisions to tonight's agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, a blue sheet has been distributed. Under Section 7 Consent Agenda, we have a new item. It's item number 7. It's an appointment to the boards and commission. Appointment of Karen Jones to the Planning Commission, nominated by Commissioner Townsend. Under the administrator's agenda, we also have a new item. It's item number 4. It's a resolution for the Memorandum of Understanding with Construction and General Laborers for Local 1290.
All right, thank you very much. Our first order of business is the mayor's agenda. We have a presentation of the 2015 AAA Kansas Community Traffic Safety Gold Award. I'd like to first recognize Sheriff Ash and or Chief Ziegler if you'd like to make some opening comments and introduce our guest.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here. It's our honor and privilege to work together with the members from Kansas Department of Transportation, Traffic Safety Bureau, as well as Kansas City, Kansas Police Department in these joint and collective enforcement efforts. And so other than that, I don't really have anything to say. Chief, if you do. Well, then I would call
You're just so
Mr.
used to
Bob
getting awards,
Hamilton
it's just
to,
another
to
day at
come
the
forward.
office.
Bob, if you would come forward and explain a little bit about why we're here. And
Mr. Bob Hamilton of the Kansas Department of Transportation Law Enforcement.
Well, to start with tonight, I realized government's at its finest. We're going to be giving 2 gold awards, and they send me 1 silver, so I'm going to have to get yours redone, Chief.
We realize the state of Kansas is struggling with budget, and they've downgraded from gold to silver.
Well, we'll start with Kansas City, Kansas PD first. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to come here tonight.
Can you please speak directly into the microphone for the people who are listening online? Thank you.
Okay. I'm what's called a law enforcement liaison officer for the Kansas Department of Transportation. I'm a 33-year retired veteran from the Johnson County Sheriff's Office, so I know what the men and women both these departments go through day in and day out, making your city and your county safe. We have 23 agencies across the state that we picked this year for this award, and your county happens to be one that both your departments are receiving this award tonight. Some of the things that the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department has done to earn the Gold Award is they're part of Operation Impact, which is a group of law enforcement officers from the Kansas and Missouri side, both sides of the state line, that we meet once a month and go over problems that each agency is having and try to come up with recommendations that can possibly solve those problems. They're being recognized for having a departmental policy requiring their use of seatbelts. They're recognized for assisting with both the Safe Routes to School program. They provide direction and control during the walking school bus. They also are heavily involved with the highly effective Kansas High School seatbelt usage program, SAFE, all with USD 500 schools. And if you've been by any of the schools last week or this week and you see an overabundance of officers, that's what they're doing right now, are making sure that your young drivers as well as your adults are buckled up around the schools. In education, they receive points for their child safety seat technician certification classes and the fitting station they operate, and point towards their award for Drive Wisely Wyandotte. They also are receiving it for the DUI and click it or ticket, you drink, you drive, you lose, St. Patrick's Day, and Cinco de Mayo DUI enforcement, and their joint venture with the Wyandotte County DA for the prom and graduation DUI work. In EMS, they're also recognized for their traffic incident management system training and fire and rescue units. The PD is receiving their second Gold Award. We started a new phase a year ago that you get 5 in a row, and when you receive your plaque, you'll receive a gem of some sort on up here next to the AAA that shows that you've received this 5 years in a row. Proof of their superior efforts in the KCK traffic safety results, adult seatbelt use is on the rise from 83 in 2012 to 86% currently. Teen belt use has risen steadily from 44% to 78% in 4 years. That's quite a drastic jump. Teen passenger safety use has also continued steadily to rise to 84%. One thing I don't like to announce, but alcohol arrests are up, which is good. We're getting them off the streets, from 496 to 804, and alcohol crashes, which I do like to announce, dropped from 203 to 162 in 3 years. That's a drastic drop. So your men and women deserve the praise for doing their jobs. Teen crashes were 311 in 2010. In 2014, the most recent year that was reported, there was 238. Finally, crash injuries have dropped from 1,001 in 2010 to 973 in 2014, which is another drastic drop. So at this time, Mr. Mayor and Councilman, I'd like to present the 2015 Gold Silver Award to Chief Ziegler and the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department.
Thank you.
Chief.
Thank you very much. I would like to say that this is half of our motorcycle unit, and these guys day in and day out do a phenomenal job. It is a credit to them and the work that they do. Riding a motorcycle is a dangerous thing, but day in and day out, they ride it. They go out and enforce the ordinances and statutes. So they did a lot of work on this, and I just appreciate their efforts. So thank you all.
Okay, we got this one right for the sheriff's office. So, the sheriff's office is receiving their award for, they're also a member of Operation Impact. The sheriff's office is also being recognized for having a community-based traffic safety committee, which is the Operation Impact, for participating in the highly successful teen seatbelt usage program, SAFE, which is Seatbelts for Everyone, which is a program that we have in all your high schools here in KCK. For their high visibility enforcement, implementation of You Drink, You Drive, You Lose, and also the Click It or Ticket, Project Prom graduation enforcement, and for having a departmental policy requiring employees to wear a seatbelt. And in the field of engineering for their work with mappers to map traffic crash scenes in order to learn from them. The Sheriff's Office is receiving their first award this year, and it is a gold award. Proof of their superior efforts are the results of adult seatbelt use has grown from 83 to 87% in 3 years. The teen seatbelt use from 44% 5 years ago to 78% in 2014. Safe school use grew from 81 to 85% in the first 2 years of the program. So at this time, I'd like to present Sheriff Ash with the Gold Traffic Award.
Thank you. Well, thank you all. Once again, thank you all very much. It's a lot of dedicated work by the men and women that are out there on the front line every day. Traffic enforcement and writing tickets is not a favorite activity of police officers. It really isn't. But we believe in it because of the numbers that Bob shared with you. It impacts in reducing crashes. It impacts in reducing total dollars lost, in property damage, lost wages, time at work for business, industry, employers on all levels. Certainly reduces pain and suffering, and most importantly, it does save lives. So we need to do it. We obviously are having an impact in the right direction with that, that we want to and that we need to. So thank Bob, thank you, thank AAA, and thank you all for allowing us to be recognized here tonight. Thank you.
All right, the next item is our consent agenda. Anyone who would like to remove an item from the consent agenda may do so by speaking at this time. Any item that is not set aside will be voted on by a single vote.
Move for approval.
Second.
Let the record show no one even tried to set anything aside. It is properly before us. Roll call.
Roll call. Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum. Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane. Markley. The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
All right, that brings us to our presentation from the Convention and Visitors Bureau, 2015 Annual Report. Bridget Jobe.
Thank you. I got the feeling that you guys are anxious to get out of here tonight, so I promise to be very fast. Thank you. Which one do I move? This one to move it forward? Okay. Thank you for allowing me to be here to talk about some of the results of the work we did in 2015. I was just before this commission in November, where I was able to share what the CVB does, how we work with different types of travelers, and many of our marketing and sales efforts. So tonight, what I'm really going to focus on is some of the results. And just a quick reminder, the mission of the Kansas City, Kansas Convention and Visitors Bureau is to market Kansas City, Kansas as a visitor destination and to increase the number of overnight stays. We work to keep Kansas City, Kansas top of mind as potential visitors plan their vacations and business travel, and we try to get them to stay longer and spend more money. Every other destination is working to get their attention, so we do have to be everywhere to keep visitors thinking about us. We have key objectives, and they are really divided into two categories. And the first three listed here are the types of travelers we work with. We work with leisure travelers, group and business travelers, and then sports, both professional and amateur, and then we work with special events. And each of these types of travelers have different needs and different ways that we have to work with them. The last three objectives are more internal. We want to educate local residents, not just on what there is to do in Kansas City, Kansas, but also on the economic impact of tourism that it has on this community. We support and want to be at the table for tourism product development. We know that to keep visitors returning, we need new, expanded, and quality product to market. We also want to take an active leadership role in the bigger tourism picture and be the voice of tourism and legislative, social, and business issues that affect our destination. So, how do we spend our money? In 2015, we started the year with a budget of a little over $734,000. Although in December, we did receive an unexpected additional approximate $63,000 because of excellent hotel collections this year. We have three budget categories, and you can see them here. We spend the majority of our dollars on marketing, 54%. 8% is spent on operational costs. That's rent, utilities, what it costs for us to live. And our contract with the unified government states that we must keep that operating percentage below 20%, and you can see we live very inexpensively. 38% of our dollars go to personnel, and of that 38%, 75% of those costs are directly attributed to marketing. We're governed by a 12-person board of directors, and we have a staff of full-time employees. So I want to share some research that we were part of in 2015 that shows where we stand as a destination and the impact of tourism in Wyandotte County. We worked with two specific research projects last year. One was regional research through Visit KC, the Kansas City, Missouri Bureau, and the other one was through the State of Kansas Tourism Division. And the interesting thing is that both of these projects were done by Tourism Economics, which is a national leader in tourism research. And each of them had a little bit different focus, but we were able to glean some pretty interesting information about Wyandotte County from both projects. In Kansas, Wyandotte County ranks third among all counties in the state for visitor spending. We have 6.6% of all visitor sales in the state. The largest categories of spending are recreation and food and beverage. We had an average increase in visitor spending of 5% per year since 2010. That's about $90 million. So in 2014, visitors spent $412 million in Wyandotte County. This research also showed us that 1 out of every 18 jobs in the county are supported by tourism spending. In the regional research, Wyandotte County has 6% of the visitor spending in the 5-county region, and you can see where we sit. This research delved a little bit more into the type of visitor who is coming to Kansas City and what they are doing when they come here. Leisure continues to be the main reason visitors come to Kansas City, with 80% of our visitors. Business has about 17%, and that combination of business and leisure is about 3%. A typical visitor to the Kansas City region is going to drive to get here. 73% are going to stay in a hotel, and they're going to be here for 2.1 nights. Visiting friends and family continues to be the number one reason for coming to Kansas City, while shopping continues to be the number one activity they do while they are here. little interesting change that we will monitor is that 51% of the overnight visitors to the Kansas City region have no children under 18 years of age. And that's an interesting thing that we want to keep track of because we are showing a decrease of families who are traveling with young children. One of the ways that we track how the industry is doing is by how our hotels are performing. And this is a good way for us to see the general health of the tourism industry. But as we drill down into the specifics, we can see what is driving our visitation and any trends that may emerge. The CVB uses Smith Travel Research, the STAR report, to gather all of this information. We receive a monthly report, plus in 2015 we added weekly reports so that we can look at each day of the month and we can track exactly what is happening. And then monthly we compare ourselves to surrounding area communities. Hotel occupancy and average daily rate are some of the key metrics that we follow. Basically, how many people are staying in our hotels and how much are they paying. We ended 2015 with 1,750 hotel rooms in Wyandotte County. We had 108 rooms under construction, and they opened in January. We had a 4.3% increase in occupancy, and we had a 7.18% increase in the average daily rate. And you can see by this chart where we rank with some of the surrounding area comparables. We have a very good average daily rate. And I'm sure no one is surprised. July, June, and August are our highest occupancy months, and the lowest three are January, December, and then November. And these are some really great numbers. So now I want to share with you some of the ways that the Bureau materially contributed to these numbers. And I want to start out with meetings and groups. How do we work with the business traveler? In 2015, we met with 157 meeting or group planners. We generated 64 leads. And a lead becomes a lead when we are really talking about something they're very interested in bringing. So we start having some specifics. At the end of the year, we were still working to book 16 of those leads. We definitely booked 19, and out of those 19 bookings, the estimated impact is over 4,100 room nights to Kansas City, Kansas, and almost $1 million in visitor spending. We do track lost business, and as you can see that we tracked 30 lost meetings throughout the year. And I've listed here the top 3 reasons given for why we lost business, and this probably doesn't surprise any of you, but the top 3 reasons why we lost it is they desire a convention center attached to a hotel in Village West, they desire convention space within walking distance of activities, or room rate on race weekends. There are multiple ways that we attract visitors to Kansas City, Kansas, and you can see some of them listed here. And we look at each marketing effort to determine its effectiveness and return on investment. Results are provided in the packet, the written report that you received, but I'd like to point out just a few of them for you. I mentioned in November that we're using a new technology called Arrivalist with a portion of our digital advertising. This technology allows us to place pixels on specific digital ads where we track who views them, where they view it, and when they come to Kansas City, Kansas. Last year, we were able to track 1,230 people who viewed our ads and then later came to Kansas City, Kansas. The return on investment for this specific marketing project was $11.97 for every dollar we spent. And in 2016, we're increasing our dollars that we're spending on this technology. For several years now, we have partnered with Visit KC on a TV campaign that also includes radio, digital, and social media advertising. Our budget does not allow for TV, but our partnership with Visit KC provides a way for our KCK attractions to partner and be in this campaign. And last year, we had 5 KCK attractions who partnered. Results for this campaign were great. We targeted Springfield, Wichita, and Lincoln, and we had an ROI of $73 for every dollar we spent on this campaign. The CVB also uses e-marketing as a way to let visitors know what is happening in KCK. And we have 5 different different methods of e-marketing. We have a monthly visitor e-newsletter, a weekly what's happening that goes to frontline workers, a quarterly tourism tidbits that goes to all our elected officials that I hope you are reading. We spent out our 10 special event e-blasts last year, and we started a new quarterly e-newsletter that goes to hospitality industry. We sent out a total of 65 e-marketing pieces last year and had an ROI of $38 for every dollar we spent. In 2015, we increased our focus on social media, and we had a 21% increase in followers. And I hope that you all follow us on Facebook and all the other social media outlets. Last year, we unveiled some new print ads in the fall, and throughout the year, we received over 13 million impressions and over 13,000 leads just from our print advertising. And the new ads that we were talking about, we unveiled in 2015, are a great segue into some of the new focus that we have in 2016. As you can see with our ads, we have this theme of selfies and picturing yourself in Kansas City, Kansas. And this is one of our leisure ads that has gotten actually some really great response. These are 3 different ads that we use. The one on the far left is another leisure ad, and it just shows you kind of a different size. The one in the middle we use with motor coach groups and senior publications, and the one on the far right is one that we use in sports publications. And this is the one that we use with all our meeting and convention publications. So you may have seen some faces in there of people you knew. We do have some really exciting projects in 2016. In December, the Board of Directors started a strategic planning process to develop a 5-year plan for the CVB. We're continuing to work on that, and we hope to share it with you later this year. One of the most exciting and needed changes from my standpoint is that we just started the process of a new website. It is going to be totally interactive, and it is compatible with our new management database system, and we will unveil it sometime this fall, and I think you're going to be very pleased with it. We are working on 2 separate sales blitz in Kansas City, Kansas, working with business leaders, encouraging them to keep their meetings here. And last year, you'll remember we did the 94 Days of Summer campaign. We've changed it up a little bit this year, and we're doing an in-market campaign called A Selfie Made Summer. And this encourages residents and visitors to take a selfie at local attractions and post it on social media. We'll also this spring be unveiling a photo app that uses illustrations at local attractions where you can place your picture into the illustration, and then you can post it on social media, or you can send it to friends and family and invite them to come and visit you in Kansas City, Kansas. So that's some of the fun stuff we are doing. Thank you again for allowing me to be here. I know there was a lot of information in the written report, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Commissioner Bynum.
Bridget, thanks for a great report. I hope you understand, you and your staff understand that you really are a vital part of this community's economic health. I love the data because it helps me to know that what I just said is true. I'm struck by this figure of 400 plus million in spending by
Sure.
tourists in our community, because that tells me that people who come here from other places spend more than we spend on our annual budget here. So that's fascinating to me.
It's interesting. I'd be glad to share this report. This was with the state of Kansas who did this, and then we paid to have it broken down into Wyandotte County data. So I'd be glad to share that. That'd be some great data.
I really appreciate also your use of innovation, because that's important to us here at the commission as well. And so you're coming right along with those big themes that are county-wide. And finally, I just have a question.
Sure.
I'm going on spring break next week, and so is, I think, every school student in the county. We're going to leave town for a few days, but I've spoken to quite a few people who still have children in school. They're not leaving town, not because gas is too high, but because they're just exhausted. And so they're they're even talking about the things that they're going to do here instead of in another town. Is there a metric that you have that captures that kind of staycation tourist spending?
You know, I'd have to look to find a specific metric, and there may be something out there that I'm just not aware of. I think it is becoming much more, many more people are doing staycations now than ever before. And maybe it has a name now, and so maybe people have always done it, but there is the name, I'm doing a staycation this year. I know that the philosophy has changed a lot in CVBs in the years that I've been in CVBs. It used to be we spent all of our money outside of where we lived because we were trying to get people to come here. As we started doing research, we realized that when people come here, number one, they're not probably calling us a lot of times to find out what there is to do. They're asking you as your friends and family, and that friends and family is such a driving factor in the Kansas City region. So we've really changed and started doing a lot of in-market marketing. I'm not aware of any specific data, but that's very interesting, and I would love to look for something up for you.
I have a question also. You mentioned that you lost 30 leads because they wanted a convention center, or one of the top three
Right.
reasons they want a convention center at Village West. Did you get any feel for the size of group they were talking about, or what size convention center could accommodate their needs?
Sure. These specific leads ranged from 100 people up to, I think the highest one was maybe 3,000. So we have a wide range. I will tell you, we don't go after large conventions. So some of our data may be a little skewed because we don't, when we're out selling, I'm not going to sell something I don't have. So we are going after the state associations, those type of meetings that we know we can host here, because it doesn't make sense for me to use staff time to do that. So I think the majority of our data would be something that we probably could host size-wise, but it's just not in the right location, or it's not the right setup of what they were looking for.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Kane.
Thank you, Mayor. Bridget, you know that I think you guys do a great job.
Thank you.
And I would love to see us, because in Kansas City, Missouri, and I've got a book in my office at work that shows that there's a lot more conventions that are at the 200 people range, the 250 people range, that I think we could do a good job to attract. And I just wish we had convention centers so we could bring the big businesses in here so they could see what we had. But as always, you've done a good job, and I really appreciate what you do.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Thank you very much for
All
your
right,
work.
thank you. Do you want this back?
All right, that brings us to item number 2. It's a presentation on the K32 Quiet Zone Feasibility Study. I do want to recognize we do have the city manager of Edwardsville, Mike Webb, here tonight. Welcome. And I'm going to invite Mr. Bach to lead us off with a presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. As many of you are aware, our initial lead on this project was Bill Heatherman, our county engineer. Bill has left us for other opportunities that have came before him. So this project has now been shared by a couple of members. Mr. Richardson is taking the lead on it tonight, and he will introduce our guests as we move into the Quiet Zone presentation.
We should also give credit to Commissioner Jim Walters, who introduced us to the idea and has been working on this for some time.
Thank you, Mr. Bach and Mr. Mayor. The Quiet Zone is part of the K32 corridor study. That study is being performed from a grant we received from the Mid-America Regional Council. They're actually helping to lead the study, and we provided some matching funds along the way for that. The Quiet Zone has been advanced as part of that study to be complete. The initial results of the study are complete now, and Mr. Cathcart with Olson Associates will be presenting those to you. But it was advanced so that the commission could consider the results of the study as part of the 2017 budget process. The rest of the K32 corridor study will be completed and hopefully presented to the Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners in August. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Cathcart.
Thank you, Rob. Mayor, Commissioners, staff, pleased to be here tonight to present the Quiet Zone feasibility study. Key is this is a feasibility study. It's not an implementation of a quiet zone, but we looked at every crossing from 65th Street on the east to the AdTrend crossing underneath K7 on the west near Bonner Springs. It's called the AdTrend crossing because it's a private crossing. It goes into an AdTrend sign. This slide here shows you some of the residential areas that are impacted by the locomotive horns. While the locomotive horns are a definite safety device at grade crossings, for residents that live in these areas, they can see them, they can hear them as being noise pollution. So these are some of the key areas, and there's 11 crossings from 65th on the east to the AdTrend crossing on the west. Some key factors about quiet zones: a lead locomotive, the sound of the horn at the lead locomotive is 100 dBA, that's decibels, and it's comparable to emergency siren being 50 feet from an emergency siren. The minimum warning system required for a quiet zone is you have to have flashing lights and gates and constant warning time train detection circuitry. This UP rail corridor has two main lines, averages 52 trains a day at a maximum speed of 60 miles an hour, and it is the heaviest tonnage rail line in all of Kansas. Safety measures that are allowable to allow a quiet zone to be in place, three of them that we looked at are non-traversable medians, 4 quad gates, and wayside horn system. This crossing has 4 private crossings on it. There's some special considerations for private crossings. While the Federal Railroad Administration's train horn rule does not require the locomotive horns to be blown at private crossings, it is Union Pacific's policy to do them at private crossings that are in an urban or a suburban setting. They don't blow them out in rural areas where it's just an agricultural use for the crossing. But if there's going to be public crossings at these private crossings, then they blow their horn. Also, a key fact is the quiet zone cannot terminate at a private crossing, and the farthest west crossing in this corridor is a private crossing, the AdTrend crossing that is directly underneath K7 bridge. Okay, the safety measures evaluated for each of these crossings. The AdTrend private crossing, we looked at closing it and providing alternate access. The alternate access was very expensive because of being built next to the river and some key drainage that would have to be crossed. And then the other one was conversion to a public crossing and a wayside horn system. I'll describe what a wayside horn system is a little later. Essentially, it's a stationary train horn at the crossing. Swingster Road, we looked at medians. Holiday Sand private crossing, we looked at 4 different alternatives. We looked at a nighttime closure with locked gates. That would mean that during the day there would be no quiet zone, but there would have to be definite commitment to closing and locking those gates every night. And there would have to be a way to let the locomotive engineers know that the gates are locked. There's a system on Fort Leavenworth where they do this. Fort Leavenworth, they have the military police that do it on a regular basis, lock and unlock these gates. We looked at also closing the crossing and providing alternate access. Again, it was expensive because the access is between the railroad and the river, and getting into close to the river. We looked at non-traversable medians, and with that, suggested converting it to a public crossing. it ties right into 111th Street in Edwardsville. And then Wayside Horn System, also suggested converting it to public. 4th Street in Edwardsville, we looked at 3 different options. 4 quad gates. That's where you have a gate that comes down on the exit, and you have in-pavement vehicle detection systems, so vehicles aren't trapped on the crossing. It delays the gate coming down if there's a vehicle in that area. We looked at Wayside Horn System, and we looked at non-traversable medians. 9th Street and 98th Street, we looked at medians. 88th Street, 4 quad gates. 88th Street is so close to K32 that you can't get the length of median necessary to put in medians. Anchor Drive, we looked at medians. Again, a private crossing. Swartz Road, a private crossing. Swartz Road is so close to K32 you can't get medians there, so we Wayside Horn System. Kansas Avenue is a complicated intersection and crossing, and 4 quad gates were recommended there. 65th Street, non-traversable medians. So a wayside horn is a stationary horn, actually 2 stationary horns at the crossing, each directed down the route that's crossing the railroad, and it's activated once the flashing lights start, and it quits when the train occupies the crossing. So it's the wayside horn is continuous for 30 seconds from the time that the flashing lights start until the train occupies the crossing. And it's while it's not going through the neighborhood like onboard locomotive horn, it's directed down the routes. The 2 displays there, the red is in 90 dBA levels, and the yellow is 80 to 90 dBA. You can see the area of influence on the left is from the wayside horn. There on the right is from an onboard locomotive horn. So the impacts are a lot less, but it is not technically a quiet zone because the people that live along the route, they're going to have the wayside horn noise. Non-traversable medians going from the tip of the gate out to 100 feet on each approach. These don't allow vehicles to drive around the end of gates, which is a major cause of accidents at crossings. So this safety measure allows the locomotive horns not to be blown at these crossings. 4 quadrant gates, that's where you have, in addition to having a gate on the approach, you have a gate on the exit. And these, it's the most expensive system that you can put in. Some considerations, cost considerations for implementing a quiet zone. If you upgrade from passive signing, the crossbuck, to a flashing light and gate system with constant warning time, you're talking about $290,000. Wayside horns, those are traffic control devices that are owned by the jurisdiction. They're interconnected to the rail, highway rail signal system. The installation costs for those is average $120,000 for a 2-lane route. There's an interconnect fee required with Union Pacific, $5,000 a year. Union Pacific requires a $10 million liability insurance because they're not blowing their horns anymore, and you've taken that safety device away from them and replaced it with this, and it's not under their control. So, and that's cost $10,000 a year per crossing. And then the maintenance of the wayside horns, these are estimated to be $5,000 a year. 4 quad gates. The Class 1 railroads require an annual maintenance fee for the 2 additional gates that are required, and this is estimated at $10,000 a year. And to upgrade from a 2 quad gate system to a 4 quad gate system is estimated at $400,000. So taking all these costs into consideration and looking at the crossings that had more than one option, we recommending that the probable safety measures for these 11 crossings and the engineer's opinions of cost is, $5,767,000. One thing is quiet zones have to be at a minimum a half a mile in length, and you can this can be phased into several different chunks. You don't have to do all of these, but this is an estimate of what it would cost if the total quiet zone was put in place. Are there any questions?
Commissioner Walters.
Thank you, Al. I also wanted to bring to everyone's attention that Beth Dawson is sitting here. She's the senior land planner for the Mid-America Regional Council who's directing this study for us. I think you all know, but I'll remind you, if in case you don't, this study is the joint effort of 3 cities, Kansas City, Kansas, Edwardsville, and Bonner Springs. And as Al mentioned, there's a lot of moving parts. There's multiple recommendations for some crossings. There's obviously 3 cities involved. There's opportunities for phasing or not for phasing, and each one of those issues all have dollars attached to them. So this is, as was mentioned, a feasibility study. It's not a final implementation study. There's still work to be done. But I hope that this is information that we will all be able to use and to evaluate and potentially include in our CMIP program, so we can take it to the next step to nail down some costs and financing options and phasing options and things like that. None of these decisions obviously need to be made tonight, but this is an important first step. And as Rob mentioned, it's hopeful that this kind of a thing could be in our mind as we prepare for our 2017 budget and 2016 amended budget. So thank you very much for your presentation, and hope to see more of you soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you. Well, kudos to Commissioner Walters for his insight into all of the persons who have participated in this feasibility study. As I read through the information, I had a lot of questions, some of which were answered tonight. But the one thing I just want to make sure that I understand, we're calling this a quiet zone. What will we have if some or all of these alternatives are implemented? Will you have a quiet zone in these certain areas all the time where you never hear any horns blowing, or only at certain times of the day or evening? This obviously has implications that could be applied to other districts. Say like in the Fairfax district, is nothing worse than hearing a loud train at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. So what will you have if these steps are taken?
Well, that's a good question. And all the options that we looked at were a 24-hour quiet zone. The only one that wasn't a 24-hour quiet zone was the option of lock gates at the Holiday Sand. And but if the locomotive engineer sees a safety reason to blow his horn, he's going to blow his horn. If there's somebody walking near the track, or they're approaching the track, or there's animals, or he's going to err on the side of safety. But it's they're outside of that, they wouldn't blow their horn all day long.
Is it accurate to say with more than 10 crossings and 56 trains a day, there's over 500 horn blasts per day in this area?
Well, they start blowing their horn 15 to 20 seconds in advance of every crossing. So every train that goes through is doing it 11 times. You take 11 times 52 and you're over 500. It's just, yeah.
That's a lot of horns.
Before the downturn in the movement of coal, this line had 70 trains a day on it.
All right. All right, any other questions on the quiet zone? All right, seeing none, thank you all very much. We appreciate your work. All right, our last item is a presentation of the Administrator's Quarterly Report. Mr. Bach.
Thank you, Mayor. Issued this report out earlier by email. However, Mr. Connor is pressing out a hard copy of it for you to review. Not going to get twice in one night. Yeah, thank you, Tim. This is a continuation of the quarterly reports I've been doing since being the county administrator, the areas that we're covering. And this is the consistent same areas that I've been doing in the previous reports that were over public safety, infrastructure, customer service, innovation, eco-devo, planning, transportation, healthy communities, environment, finance, housing and workforce. And then we have a few different other ones. And then I've added a section on the 2016 initiatives as part of the report. As I know that'd be an area of active interest for all of you. So as I did last time, I'm not going to go into the detail of everything within the report. You have a copy of it, both a hard copy and an electronic copy that you can go through. And if you have any questions, I or my administrative staff would be happy to answer any questions you have. In the area of public safety, I'll note probably most of these are all pretty big ones as we're looking at. We have ongoing labor negotiations for the fire and the sheriff's department, which were taking place in the fourth quarter. Our first strategic planning session with our labor management team was held. It was implemented through our facet study. We had our ongoing detention study presentation that was put together for January. It was just outside of the quarter. And then we were working through our RFP for our police and sheriff organizational and efficiency analysis. So those are all major items that we're working on track from that year. Under the area of the sheriff, I'll just notice there's several items that came out here. One is where we installed additional 27 cameras to restore and expand an existing security system. In the area of the police department, I want to note that the chief was able to get 51% of his department certified for crisis intervention team, the CIT members. Also, the last item you'll note that our human resources department went out for the recruitment of a new HR analyst, which was going to be specifically in place this year to work with those departments for public safety recruitment. In fire, we did some of our preliminary planning between HR and fire on the recruitment for fire trainees to come on. Also, I already noted the facet study, which really is occupying most of the time, specialty study within that department. In municipal court, they processed 10,377 cases, which I don't have the exact order of magnitude, but actually this is a decrease in number, and it's an interesting fact because if you look at the study that was presented tonight, if we look at areas where we're down, it's in animal cases and traffic cases and such like that, but what we're seeing and also failure to show. So what we're having is these are cases that come to municipal court. It doesn't mean we're issuing less in terms of tickets. In fact, we're up, but we're getting people to be more responsive and pay those before they come to municipal court. The one area that we were up in was that in housing. So that's been an area of increase where we're issuing more citations out there. but we're continuing to see a high number. I believe the number was up about 9% in the quarter-over-quarter in that area. And
I got to ask you a question on that, if I might.
Sure.
Can you speak directly into the microphone, please?
Yeah. I got a document that indicated the last 5 years of revenue out of the municipal court. I was a little surprised to see that at least the document I got showed that in 2015, I believe the number was 4.6 million, and our high in the previous 5 years had been 5.6. That's $1 million drop in revenue for writing more cases, and part of my suggestion is either at our retreat or what's the reason? I mean, I don't think people are violating traffic laws any less, and we heard how the increase in numbers of DUI cases. Why would we be down $1 million that we got to make up somewhere else? And it's just a question that occurred to me because I saw you on this thing, and maybe you could look into that, and maybe I'm wrong.
No, I believe you are right. In fact, I had the information from Judge Ryan, and I'm just slipping to be able to remember what the reason is for that. But he was going through, there were some different things that came into play that had an impact on some of their charges and some of the collections that were coming about, and he had noted that he thought that was going to have a drastic impact on his future revenue collections, but I'm not recalling what that is. I'll get that and try to have that information.
We need to know, because obviously of the impact on the budget if we're going to continue to expect a decline in traffic revenue.
Well,
Which I'm sure the public is very, very happy about. That means less fines, but obviously it means some money has to be moved around to make up the difference.
Well, on the sensitive issue, we do not view our municipal court as a revenue source. There is an inherent money that comes in to pay for the costs of enforcing our laws, and we look at it as an offset to the cost of the judges, the clerks. There's a tremendous amount of money that is spent in our municipal court just to hold people accountable for paying their fines. But I just want to make sure everyone understands we do not use the word revenue when we're talking about our municipal court. We use receipt offset for costs because we don't view our, and this has happened in Ferguson and other places, we do not view our municipal court as a place to raise revenue from our community.
Yes, and in least anybody misunderstands, certainly I'm not calling for quotas by each police officer. Right. And that.
Just wanted it on the record, Commissioner.
But it is interesting that money does go on what's called the revenue side of the budget.
It does.
All right, we'll look up that.
Let's go on.
Under infrastructure, completed our 2015 mill and overlay streets, which is obviously a big project, and the bid out of the project for safe routes to school, which we'll be doing now in this year, so that's one that gets started at the end of last year. Continuing on infrastructure, we finished in 2015 108 different project areas. We're under active management. 40 were in construction projects were bid. Developed and finalized a new and customer service. This is one the commission was actively involved in as we developed and finalized a new community development block grant application process and issued requests for proposal in November, and the applications came back in December. So I believe the efforts put forth there put together a much better project due to the work done by this governing body. Continuing on cover service, I just note there are several different projects that are activities that happen under Parks and Recreation. The last one there, Wyandotte County Lake, was ranked number 3 in the country for best places for trails by Runner Magazine, which was an interesting notation and quite a feat for our park.
Quite a feat for running.
I do what I can to set you up, Mayor.
Thank you.
Under innovation, I'll note that we assisted district court. There are several different items here. We assisted district court with the migration from the Oracle to SQL for the jury system. And we also migrated what I would qualify was a fairly antiquated system that the sheriff had in place for warrants and applications to a new SharePoint system, which is much more innovative for them to be able to track and quickly access and search through warrants than we had previously had. Our 311 system is continuing from phase 1 to phase 2. We'll be having a special session on that coming up in the next quarter to give you more details on that, but there's been quite a bit of work that's been going on behind the scene to move us to this point. Our Encode 360 was put together. Mr. Richardson has taken the lead on that. It allows for us to go in and take a better appropriate look at our zoning properties. You can see what's for sale and lease in the land bank. Did I get that right? Is that the one in the land bank, Rob? Yeah, that was the one yours. Under economic development, we've approved development agreement for the $50 million Legends Apartments project. There are several different IRBs and different pilots and programs that move through in relationship to different programs. We formally brought the policy forward for the small business grant program. I believe $25,000 was issued out in that program. That report was given to the commissioners last year on that side, and we continue that into this year. Continuing there, a big feat was selling the Legends Theater, also in the fourth quarter. One that took some time to get done, but we feel very good about that accomplishment, and AMC is operating and getting ready to spend several $1 million on new upgrades going into that theater. In the area of planning, one we just had the presentation on tonight, but I will highlight the fact of the continued work on the big plans and the Mosdale Master Plan, the K32 Tri-City Transportation, the Quiet Zone Plan, and the sign codes, which have been occupying a lot of time within that department. Under multimodal transportation, the Transportation Department implemented their first interregional fixed route transit system, the 103 system. I'll also note their year-over-year numbers. Their ridership increased 11.22% from the same time frame in 2014. In healthy communities, which also includes parks and recreation, hosted additional runs out at Wyandotte County Lake. I guess that's how we get to be number 3 by the activities that are going on there. I'll take note of the fact that our Fetal Infant Mortality Review Action Team hosted the county's first ever candlelight vigil for Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Day in October last year. Several other events hosted by that group. Also in the health department, and I think the committee has seen these several times, but there are a couple of different grants that they've been actively working to enhance different health activities, you know, the Baby and Me and tobacco-free programs, as well as the breastfeeding programs. Under the environment, we conducted 5 separate blitzes and addressed over 1,800 different illegal vehicles in our community in the fourth quarter of last year. Within finance, this first line up there, I got behind. Within finance, I'll note the several projects that have been out in finance. Vacation Village closed in October. That was a $72.9 million financing and a $12.2 million B-Series. You know, many times we look at a lot of these projects that we advance and get done. You see the work that comes forward, but Finance Department will spend a lot of time working through these finances and get them in place as they come to this point. And also in the fourth quarter of last year, the Treasury Department issues out all their tax statements and billings. Again, a major feat, but it's one that just kind of happens every year, and we kind of somewhat take it for granted, but it's part of those actions that happen behind the scenes that we don't see. Last slide, just several different areas are noted here. I'll note personnel. Hired our new chief legal advisor, who's here with us working tonight, doing a great job. But this has been kind of that ongoing through the 2 years of my administration, where I think I've now turned to close to 15 of the higher department heads or high managers within the government, and we put in place our interim county appraiser in the middle of December. Also, I'll note that the total revenue collected under business license was up 5% at about 2.3 million, close to $2.4 million. The next slide just notes the different forms of communication we've used to get information out to the commissioners. I think we're maybe down a little bit, which is a good thing on emergency notification systems, because that usually denotes something that is not necessarily good news when that comes out on the emergency side. The part you were asking about earlier, Commissioner Walters, this is the 2016 initiatives. So I'm just I'll walk through each one of these so you can have a highlight to each point. Horticulture position, that job is posted. I think we're about to fill it. Same thing with the maintenance tech position. Our summer mowing program, what we've done is gone through and done an analysis how we think would be the best. We had talked about a little in this last year of making some tweaks to it. With the money was there, I think we had hired like 12 students last year. This year we're hiring 4 full-time employees as mowers, which we feel like will be more efficient, and then 10 students during the summer. So it gives us more people and more concentrated efforts. I think going through that, our mowing team felt like we could accomplish a lot more with the money we were allocated for this program by going in this direction. The parks electronic scheduling was supposed to be done in the fourth quarter of last year. It was not, so that is still, DOTS is helping out with that a little bit more, getting in place, and we'll hopefully have that in place by the summer of this year. Wyandotte County Parks Master Plan, we're going through a vendor selection process for that right now to get them on board with us to help us as we go through and do that planning process this year. And we funded design money for the accessible park. We are going through the process of selecting a firm to help us with that. We still will have to working to get the money that we'll actually use to put that in place, but we're getting the design, working through the design, which we have funding for now. HR recruitment specialist, which I noticed that we advertised for that in the fourth quarter of last year. It wasn't funded until this year, but I moved forward and had the posting done last year, so that position is filled, and they're actively working with our public safety departments now. Our police cadet program has begun the selection process for 3 cadet positions. The fire trainee program has being developed, and we'll start to recruit for that this summer and into the fall. Our animal control division, that position has been posted. I'll note, I believe there was a presentation done with the commission when they were doing an update, and I guess I should call it animal services. Animal Services, I think there was a little confusion on that position when they came forth, but that position was in fact funded, and as it has been posted, should be nearing the point of being closed to be able to be filled. Also under the Animal Services Division, we have the evaluation of the potential facility enhancements, which I believe we funded $100,000 in 2016 for work to be done there, and the chief presented on that to the standing committee about the different things that we're looking at. District Attorney funded an intern position, which was filled. Neighborhood Resource Center was looking at, they will move forward with their part-time positions for the basically 2 quarters of the year, which we'll go out and post either later this month or in April. And then in Sheriff's administrative support, that position has been filled. Urban Development Gap Fund, worked through the process with economic development and finance as to how we could fund that when we have projects that we're ready to advance. To date, we don't have any projects that we are advancing yet. Neighborhood project area cleanup reinvestment. This was basically it was $100,000, then there was $10,000. We had a couple different buckets that could go toward the demolition of the housing or also for boarding up of homes and such like that to keep them from being more run down. As the Economic Development Department is a fairly small department, we don't have people out through all the neighborhoods. What we've done is sat down and had some conversation with Chief Ziegler and enlisting community policing and other neighborhood people to help us identify key areas that we could go in and maybe make the greatest impact. So we're using their boots that are on the streets to help us with that program. The Small Business Startup Initiative, which I mentioned earlier, we started in 2015. It's underway and it continues into 2016. Applications for this year are under review, and I believe we've started to award a couple of those. Interestingly enough, on that program, I noted that we've had several applications that have come in from people that are outside of our community. Those have been rejected. We want those to be for Kansas City, Kansas business or Wyandotte. I believe that's Wyandotte County businesses.
Help the Metro.
In our urban development specialist position, we're finalizing the hiring process for that position. Legends 14 Theater, already noted that's been sold and transferred. The Hilton Garden Inn, we have the potential buyer we're working with and moving into the final stages for moving that into a near closing, I believe. Continuing on that, our Chief Knowledge Officer, we are conducting interviews for that. The other two positions that are in the innovations area, the officer and the open data position, I'm holding on those two until we have our Chief Knowledge Officer in place to be able to assist us with that and bring their insights to that position. New websites, content management system, the Yodel has been selected as our vendor to assist with conversion from our Ectron to our new content management. The commission funded $100,000 for commission initiatives. To date, we haven't spent any money out of this fund, so it is still in place, unless we wanted to allocate that to the survey. I didn't hear a motion on that. Oh, okay. Begin implementation of the police vehicle body cameras. We delayed that for now, and that was brought back to the commission after we went through and saw the heavy costs that were going on the ongoing basis with that. So we're conducting some ongoing evaluation of that. I believe you did authorize the chief when he came forward with that to divert some of that money over toward the fiber systems that come into the headquarters, which will put them in a better position for that in the future. And new money to pay for planning and designs of the fire station. That's being coordinated as we go through the facet study with our labor management team as we will start to look ahead. So those are the 2016 initiatives. I believe we were able to capture them all and continue to work with them. So from the standpoint of, I believe that end of 2015 was a very active year. Our active year, we had a lot of stuff accomplished in that quarter, a lot of stuff continuing to move forward, and really summation of a lot of things that happened in the year. And now just looking ahead to what's happening with our initiatives, which some of these I guess I'll get to put back on my quarterly report for the first quarter of this year, but I knew you were all anxious to see where you were with these items because we built these into the budget, and I think it was one of the first years we were able to put forth a lot of new initiatives for a change that we were able to be active on.
All right, Commissioner Murguia.
Thank you. Just a quick comment. I hope we can put the commissioner initiatives that were discussed tonight on the strategic planning agenda because I have questions for him and I'm way too tired to start talking about them tonight. If that's okay, that would be my request.
For the initiative or the
the initiatives.
The retreats?
To talk about it at our retreat or strategic planning.
Okay.
Commissioner Walters.
Thank you very much for the initiatives list. It's far expanded from the version I saw that we talked about earlier, and it's really helpful for me to jog my recollection of the various items that we talked about 9 or 10 months ago or whenever we were finalizing our budget. A couple questions. Startup business assistance I thought was a really great initiative, and there's no one who stepped forward yet with a program that has been deemed worthy, or are we still in the process of publicizing that?
Are you referring to the startup businesses?
Small business startup assistance.
No, yeah, we did use that money.
But we committed some for 2016 also, right?
Yes, there's 50,000 in 2016. And I believe we've awarded 15,000, George. I think that's come out of that's been awarded this year. We had an application that came in January 5th or something like that. We go through and try to spend a fair amount of time vetting through those, and it's also, now one of the ones we awarded last year, we put stipulations on them, so we make sure how the money is going to be expended and what it'll come back to, and that may be coming back to us. So we did award all the 25,000, even though one of them may come back if they don't complete what they said, but then we've awarded about 15 out of this year's.
And the Urban Development Gap Fund, kind of the same. I thought that was a really good initiative.
Well, I did too. I think one of the things I found with the Urban Development Gap Initiative was we built that in as a gap fund. And that meaning that a development would come forward to us and show us how they could do the project. We'd talk about our incentives and then define if there's a gap in the middle that we needed to step in, and that's where we'd use this fund. We haven't had a lot, but I will say that's what come forth have. The initial request kind of came in and said, this is what we want to build and give us 500 or give us some money to go with that. And that didn't quite fill in where I was after with this. I mean, I want to push through that process and come back to them and say, okay, I still need to see all the things we do in any kind of evaluation to go through a project to see how we make it work. Then we have our normal incentives that we would say that we reinvest within a project area. So it was interesting. I was having a little bit of discussion on that with Lisk just the other day. Stephen came over and he talked about how he had the same thing whenever they put things out in form of a grant. Many times different agencies will walk in and just say, okay, great, give me the grant. But there's a whole lot of vetting process to that. So maybe we haven't advertised it right or whatever, but I really did look at it from the standpoint from time to time we will have good projects come in and we work through and then we identify where there's a gap at. And that's really where I want that money to go into. And if I'm not following the proper direction from you all, then let me know. But that's really how I'm working it.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. I believe that concludes our meeting tonight. We are adjourned.
We have one more item, Mr. Mayor. The administrator's item number 4, the blue sheet,
Darn it.
the MOU.
This is a good one. We do have a blue sheet item, and it is a resolution for the memorandum. Can we handle both of these with one vote, or do we need 2 votes? One vote?
Move approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the motion with General Labor's Local 1290. I want to commend our administrator and our legal team. This brings 9 of our 13 labor unions under contract, 53% of our union workforce. A job well done. Roll call.
Roll call, Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
I believe now we are adjourned. Thank you for coming tonight.